Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 916, October the 4th, 2019, Friday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Alrighty, it's good to be back. Missed a day there, but anyway, we're back and we've got about 2 days worth of information to cover, so we have to move pretty quickly. So I want to start off today by just kind of backtracking and going back and covering the past 48 hours of information that we've learned regarding the so-called whistleblower, the fake whistleblower. Just some new information that's coming out and what's going on around that, and then we'll move on and try to catch up to the rest of the news. So obviously the so-called whistleblower scheme continues to unravel literally by the hour. So we have Jake Crapper over there at CNN coming out today with a report saying that the whistleblower is a Democrat. Did that surprise anybody? I don't think so. But it was nice of Jake Crapper to point that out. Likely because he knows it's coming out anyway. We learned that the whistleblower's lawyer, of course we learned this last week, but I guess just to reiterate, the whistleblower's lawyer is a Democrat and has donated to the Biden campaign. Then we learned that the Democrat chairman of the House and Ways Committee, Richard Neal, is admitting to receiving a complaint from a whistleblower at the end of July. And it's a little unclear if this is the same whistleblower or a different whistleblower, because now there's just literally in the last few hours a new rumor coming out that there's another whistleblower that's coming out of the IRS. Now, the Ways and Means Committee is probably where someone like that would go, because it's not involving intelligence. So it's hard to say exactly what's going on there, but I'm sure it's probably just another plot. And let's face it, the IRS doesn't have a lot of credibility after that little charade that they ran on Republicans with our good friend Lois Lerner, who walked scot-free. Do you think they want to go there and reopen that can of worms? I don't think so. Then we get this, it's pointed out, this John Brennan tweet, where John Brennan says, and this tweet came out on August the 29th, just one day after the bug-eyed fool, Adam Schiff, sent out his tweet on August the 28th. Basically, in that tweet, Schiff basically says things that 2 weeks later we would find out that what he's talking about is this information from the whistleblower, clearly showing that the bug-eyed fool had this information about this whistleblower 2 weeks prior, and he tweeted about it. So then the day after the bug-eyed fool's tweet, we get John Brennan, and in his tweet, at the end of the paragraph in his tweet, he says, quote, "Their, T-H-E-I-R, their protective cocoon is only temporary." Who's he talking about? Their. Well, remember the original whistleblower complaint and Schiff's tweet suggesting that it wasn't just Trump, but it was Giuliani, Pompeo, and Barr who were all involved in trying to cover up something. So clearly, Mr. Potato Head was also aware of what was going on 2 weeks before it came out, at least. In fact, it could be John Brennan cooking all this up for the Rotten Reverend. We have learned that the bug-eyed fool Schiff withheld news about the whistleblower from the ranking member, Devin Nunes. That's right. When you're the head of that committee, you're supposed to share what you have with the ranking member. In this particular case, we now know that he did not. Now, do you remember when Devin Nunes went over to the White House Schiff to take a look at some things over at the White House regarding the FISA warrants? And because he didn't tell Schiff that he was going, Schiff was able to force Nunes to recuse himself and step aside while he went through an ethics investigation for 9 months and really lost his position as the head of the House Intelligence Committee at a crucial time. So here we have Schiff doing the exact same thing he accused Nunes of. and he's the one that was forced Nunes to have to step aside from his position as the chair. So here we have Schiff doing the exact same thing. He withheld this news that he had about the whistleblower. He did not tell Devin Nunes, the ranking member, which, by the committee rules, he's obligated to do. I certainly hope that Devin Nunes is going to take up this issue and force the bug-eyed fool, Adam Schiff, to recuse himself. And he should already, because of so many other reasons. His obvious political bias, his withholding information, the fact that he didn't disclose that this whistleblower, so-called whistleblower, came to a staffer. There's a lot more than that even. But that's just some of the things that we know, and there's a lot of other things we don't know that I'm sure we'll be finding out. It's not looking good for the bug-eyed fool. Now, what's kind of humorous about this is that Madame Botox, who's a smoking idiot, by the way, put all of her marbles into Jerry Nadler, the Penguin, hoping that Jerry Nadler's committee would be able to bring about this impeachment. But after dropping the ball and looking like a damn fool, she realized that the Penguin wasn't up to the task. So she turns then to the bug-eyed fool, Adam Schiff. And now she's finding out he may be more incompetent than the Penguin. What a loser. Madame Botox is not smart enough to realize that the two guys that she is counting on are the bug-eyed fool and the Penguin. She thinks these guys are going to be able to get away with running a scam like this. Anyone who thinks Pelosi is smart is stupid. That's not a smart move. If I had my impeachment hopes up really high and I wanted to make sure it got done right, the last two guys I would look at would be the bug-eyed fool and the Penguin. Madame Botox obviously has had more than her face stretched. Of course, then we get the Democrats, the demo commies, I should say, demanding documents from the State Department on Ukraine. This one sure blew up in their face because, they sure got the documents, but the documents that they got were documents showing how the rotten Reverend Clinton and the Democrats were colluding in some corruption with the Ukrainian officials in the 2016 election. And of course, they got the documents on the Biden investigation and information regarding his son's involvement with the Burisma situation. So they were thinking that they were going to have this really big information drop on Trump or someone around Trump or what have you, and instead I think it was the IC that showed up, the IG showed up, and to have this emergency hearing, and the documents that he drops on them, the ones that they wanted, turn out to be documents that are very damning to the rotten Reverend, the demo commies, and the deep state. That sure blew up in their face. And we also know that the whistleblower contacted the bug-eyed fool, Adam Schiff, before filing his complaint, which is a violation. It's not following the proper procedure. Not following the proper procedure. And we also are learning now, and it's still a little sketchy, but it appears that originally this whistleblower filled out the old form, which would only allow you to be a first-hand whistleblower. Wouldn't allow for hearsay or second-hand. So that's the first form he fills out. Then, because that form didn't work for what he was doing, that's when they created the new form, and then he signed off on that one too. So it looks like what we have is two forms. The original form, where he says he was that he did have original knowledge, first-hand knowledge, and the second one where he claims it's hearsay. So this is all messed up, and someone needs to sort that out. We also know, of course, that this so-called whistleblower was a CIA officer who was acting as a liaison working for the NSC, stationed at the White House. And of course, we've now learned that the entire whistleblower system that they have there for the Central Intelligence Agency is designed for blowing the whistle on things occurring within the Central Intelligence Agency. It's not designed to blow the whistle on people outside the Central Intelligence Agency, and certainly not the Commander-in-Chief, who is the head of the Central Intelligence Agency. The President is over the CIA. So these are just some of the things that have popped up here in the last 48 hours or so, and by the time you watch this video, there'll probably be a dozen more. There's all sorts of pressure now being put on Schiff to be censored, to resign, to recuse. We have the White House sending a letter to Pelosi saying, we're not sending you any documents regarding impeachment until you have an official vote on the House floor and get the votes for impeachment. And of course, you have multiple members of the Freedom Caucus and some other Republicans in the Senate basically saying that there needs to be further investigation into this matter, and that the impeachment hearing should be called off. The whole thing should be called off until they get more information, because the demo commies are trying to fast track this, and it's simply not going to happen. So it's still a whirlwind of stuff. Literally every hour something new breaks on the story. So it's moving very quickly, but it seems to be unwinding badly for the demo commies, because it was a plot just like all the other plots. This one, though, I think is going to really bite them. I think this one here is going to bite them. Well, my friends, it looks like the Commie Bernie, it looks like Commie Bernie is done. Obviously, I don't wish anything bad on Commie Bernie as far as his health is concerned. It's not good to hear that he's having heart issues, had to have an emergency surgery, a couple stents put in, and that sort of thing. We know that obviously he canceled his upcoming planned events, and we know that he canceled $1.6 million worth of ads that he was going to be running in a couple of the early primary states, the first two primary states. So all of this would indicate, and common sense would indicate, that Bernie is done, that it's over, that he's got to pack it in. Because right now he just needs to focus on his health. He's 78 years old. He's obviously got this problem. He's canceling his appearances. He's canceling ad buys that he had already made. And he'll pay a pretty good fee for doing that, by the way. So everything here would indicate that Bernie is done, because you would assume his doctor is going to say, hey man, you're 78. The type of rigorous schedule you have to keep up to be campaigning for a presidential election, it's not something you want to put it's not the type of stress that you need to be having right now with your current situation. And we're going to recommend that you take at least a month and just chill out, don't do anything, take it easy, and we need to follow up and all these sorts of things. So he's going to be getting advice from his doctor not to be going out and trying to campaign for president because of how much that involves. But we have the Bernie campaign putting out a statement later this afternoon, would be Thursday, late Thursday afternoon, around 5, 6 o'clock. They put out a statement saying that Bernie is going to be going home in a couple days, that he's going to relax for about 2 weeks, and that he plans on attending that final debate, which is coming up here in about 2 weeks or so. I don't know what to make of that. Why would you cancel your ad buys in the first two primary states but still show up in 2 weeks, or say you're going to show up in 2 weeks for the debate? Well, as you know, most of you know, I've said this many times, that Bernie, the Commie Bernie, knows that he has zero chance of being the nominee for the Democrats. Zero chance. And that this is really part of Bernie's retirement plan. It's to build his donor list and to get together as much cash as he can before he checks out, because this is his last tour. So this is his final farewell tour, and when he checks out, he wants to check out with as much cash as he possibly can. And of course, he wants to make sure his donor list is as big as possible, because he's going to be selling that for somewhere around $10 to $20 million. So it looks like to me that Commie Bernie doesn't want to shut off the spigot quite yet. In fact, maybe he thinks that being in the hospital may get him some more sympathy donations. And I think maybe he just wants to try to run the last 2 or 3 weeks of fundraising as hard as he possibly can to get all the graft that he can before he checks out. That's what I think. Although Commie Bernie is kind of crazy, and his doctor, even though he may advise that Commie Bernie not go out and put himself through this, he may do it anyway. And I think maybe he's a true believer. Maybe Commie Bernie still believes he has a chance. I can't imagine him actually believing that. Maybe he just wants to try to advance the ball down the field a little farther before he packs it in. Or maybe it's just like I said, he just wants to try to maximize the graft before he finally packs it in, because once he packs it in, he's done pretty much. But he'll still continue to collect the big fat salary for the rest of his life from the Senate, from being a senator. He's still going to have all those great benefits. He's got millions of dollars. He's going to keep all this money. He's going to keep all the money. He's going to sell his donor list. I mean, Bernie is going to retire fat and happy, my friends. He may not live very long to enjoy it, but I don't think Bernie enjoys life all that much anyway. He's a miserable communist. But I think the smart money would say that Bernie is done, and I do expect that he's going to drop in the polls. I think a lot of people probably looking at this, maybe Bernie supporters, may think, well, Bernie's not going to make it. Who do we go to now? Well, you know, I know some Bernie Sanders supporters. I have a couple of good friends who are Bernie supporters, and they're different. They're not like Democrats, really. They're something else. And I don't know that anyone else in the Demo-Commie field appeals to them. Now, I know that as soon as Bernie drops out, all these other people will be trying to get his votes. They'll all have to move really hard left to do that, although they're all pretty hard left already. So I think that they'll be trying to get his supporters, but I don't think Bernie's supporters are that way. I mean, I think they're like Bernie or bust, pretty much. If it's not Bernie, then they'll either write in Bernie, or they will maybe vote Green Party, or maybe stay home. I don't see very many Bernie supporters going to Legs in the Air Harris. I don't see many Bernie supporters going to Warren. And a lot of them don't like Warren because after Bernie was cheated in 2016 and it became obvious public information that he was cheated, Warren did not come out and defend Bernie. Warren, in fact, went out and endorsed the rotten Reverend Clinton, as did Bernie. Went out and campaigned for her. But a lot of Bernie supporters haven't forgotten that Warren did not stand behind Bernie. She endorsed the rotten Reverend over Bernie. And even after knowing he was cheated. So Warren doesn't have, Hiawatha does not have very much respect with the Bernie community. The Bernie bros are they're kind of like a Ron Paul supporter in the Republican Party. Ron Paul was the outsider in the Republican Party, and if Ron Paul couldn't be the nominee, these Ron Paul supporters just weren't going to go out and vote for McCain or for Romney. They just stayed home or voted Libertarian or wrote in, Harry Brown or something. This is the same way that the Bernie supporters are. You might see a couple percentage of them shift over for another candidate, but I would say that when Bernie drops out, I would say his supporters drop out right along with him. Well, we have Mr. Potato Head on CNN telling them that he is expecting to be interviewed by John Durham. Mr. Potato Head. Now, what does this mean? Well, it means that he's received a letter. He's received what they call a target letter, pretty much telling him to make time available on his schedule for an interview with Mr. Durham. There's probably a list of documents that they may want him to bring. There may be things that they are asking him to look at his emails and reflect upon based on some of the topics that they may be discussing, that they want him to be familiarized with them when they start asking questions. So he's obviously received the letter. He knows that he is going to be targeted by Durham. Now, he's telling Rachel Madcow that he is going to be targeted by Durham, and then he says, but I don't really know why. I'm not sure why they're looking into the counterintelligence operation or the Russian investigation, saying that they want to find out how it was predicated. I mean, it seems, strange to me that they don't know why it was predicated or why they'd be interested in why it was predicated, even if they find some dirt. Why would they want to dig up dirt? No, Mr. Potato Head, that's not really it, and you know it, you lying son of a bitch. It's because you were not investigating Russia. You were targeting Trump, using Russia to target Trump. You weren't investigating Russia because you knew there was no Russian collusion at all. It was total bullshit. Because, and you know this because you manufactured the evidence, Mr. Potato Head. And Mr. Barr and Mr. Durham know that. They have the evidence. Now, what does this tell us? Well, it tells us that Barr and Durham are getting pretty close to the end of their investigation because they are now worked themselves up to a cabinet-level guy. That would be Mr. Potato Head. Other cabinet-level people will probably be getting the same type of letter that Mr. Potato Head got, and that would include people like the dishonorable former director of the Federal Bureau of I'm With Her, James Comey, Stretch. You'll probably, McCabe probably has received this letter. Lynch, Yates have probably received this letter. And probably Rice, Powers, and Ben Rhodes have probably received this letter. So, as you can see, because now he's up to cabinet level people, it's just a matter of time. And I'm sure that the last two people he will interview will be Barack Hussein Obama, likely Joe Biden as well, along with the rotten Reverend Clinton. They will be the last three to be interviewed. So they generally work themselves from the bottom to the top. So the fact that he's now at cabinet level people means that he's getting close. He's getting close to moving into the executive branch. And that means we're probably just a couple of months away from them basically having interviewed everyone they're going to interview, because once you get to the top, that's it. Now, they may choose to go back and interview people down the line based on new things they've learned, but for the most part, you work from the bottom to the top, and they're obviously getting very close to cabinet level. They're cabinet level people now. So we can see the progress that they're making, which means they are moving pretty quickly in this investigation, because this is a big, big investigation. And Mueller took, over 2 years. Durham and Barr have only been focusing on this since about, March, or maybe even later, maybe like May, but it was spring. So they've only been at this now for about, really, in earnest. I know Durham was brought in much earlier on something else, but they've only been focusing on this part of it, the origins of the Russia investigation, since the mid to late spring. So they've only really been on this for about seven months or so. So they're obviously moving very quickly if they're already hitting cabinet level people to interview. So yeah, you should be very nervous, Mr. Potato Head, because you're not going to be able to bullshit Barr and Durham. They have the evidence, and they know that it was not a Russia investigation, Russian interference or Russian collusion. That was not what they were doing. It was a Russian hoax being perpetrated by the deep state to target Trump. There was no investigation into Russians or anything like that. There was a operation to take down the president. That's what it was. Well, first the candidate Trump, then President-elect Trump, and then President Trump. That's what's clear from the evidence that's in the public domain. And there's much more that none of us have seen that Barr and Durham are chewing on right now, along with Pompeo, apparently, because this goes into the State Department as well. Well, we have Joe Biden out there. He's panicking badly right now. You can tell he's panicking badly, and he made a threat to Trump. He says, tell Trump, you're not going to destroy me. Well, Uncle Joe, quid pro quo Joe, Trump wouldn't be the one to destroy you. It would be you and your son destroying yourselves with your corruption. But the person who's likely behind setting all this into motion would be the rotten Reverend Clinton. That's the person you should be tweeting at. And yes, you are going to be destroyed. In fact, you already are, by the way, Joe. In case you don't know, you're done. Now, the only reason that he can still manage to hang around, the only reason he's not gone right now, is because the demo commies are looking at the map, and they realize that Elizabeth Warren has a lot of problems, particularly in the South and the Southwest. She's very unpopular. She only has about 2 or 3% approval rating with African Americans. She's not doing very well with that, whereas Uncle Joe is apparently polling much higher than anybody else still in the South and the Southwest, and he polls pretty well with African Americans, Latinos, and things and such. So that's the Achilles heel for Warren. Not to mention, you had a Wall Street banker come out and tell the Democratic Party in no uncertain terms if you give us Warren, you ain't getting any money. So they're trying to hang on to quid pro quo Joe, but it's not going to happen because he can't withstand not just the gaffes he makes himself and the problems he has himself, but he can't withstand what's coming over the next 2 to 3 months. And by the time the first primary comes around, that's not till, early spring of next year. I mean, by the time the first primary comes around, Biden's going to be probably long gone. I don't think he can go another, I think there'll be more coming out. I mean, it's hard to say. I don't have a crystal ball. But just from what we know now, it's going to continue to build and mount. Giuliani's got all this evidence. I think Biden will be gone before Thanksgiving. It'd be my guess, if I was just guessing. I don't think he's going to make it to the first primary. I really don't. We have Giuliani now telling Fox News he's considering filing lawsuits against the Democrats. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Exactly what I said they should do. 2 years ago, I said they should have done this. As soon as the Mueller probe started, instead of cooperating with him, they should have said, no, we're not cooperating with you. This is a damn coup. And what we're going to do actually is we're going to file civil lawsuit against you, Uncle Bob, along with rodentstein, who put you in, along with McCabe, who's behind this thing, and Strzok, and Comey, and the whole damn deep state. And any members of Congress are pushing impeachment over this, which should have filed civil lawsuits, and there's many different articles you can pick from to do that. And these will be civil lawsuits, which means that the president's team, Giuliani, Sekulow, what have you, would get to do discovery. And in discovery, they would have been able to get all the documents that would have uncovered the coup. It was the way to get around what the Mueller investigation was designed to do, which was to protect the evidence while the media created the firestorm to give the Democrats the fuel they needed for impeachment. So now they're finally taking my advice, about 2.5 years late. We have learned in recent days that Barr and Durham met with top level. And I actually read a story where they actually named these individuals. And there's 3 or 4 high-level Italian intelligence officials as well as law enforcement officials who are cooperating with the investigation. Barr and Durham met with these top-level intelligence officials and law enforcement officials in Italy. Then, 2 days later, after Barr and Durham are done meeting with these guys, Pompeo comes to town and he meets with some of the same intelligence and law enforcement officials himself. So, whatever it is that they've uncovered or discovered in Italy, it was so important that Barr himself wanted to see it or hear it firsthand, and Pompeo as well. So it must involve something having to do with the State Department as well. So Barr, Durham, and Pompeo have all now had a one-on-one with these high-level intelligence officials in Italy and law enforcement people. And the story is that when Misfit's name became public, he immediately went to intelligence officials asking them for protection. Intelligence and law enforcement officials asking for protection, in which case they interviewed him and they recorded the interview where he allegedly tells them why he fears for his life and why he needs protection. And that is what they were there learning. It's also being reported, it's not been confirmed, but it's also being, I would say, rumored maybe, because it's not a hard fact yet, but it's being rumored that while there, Durham and Barr also either met with Mifsud and his attorney, Mr. Rowe, or possibly just Mr. Rowe. We're not really sure if Mifsud was available in that meeting as well, but it appears that they did talk to Mr. Rowe, as well as all these intelligence officials in Italy and law enforcement people. So clearly, there's a lot going on there. And again, as I said 2 days ago, when you look at this entire plot, you can turn the entire thing 180 degrees by just doing one thing, proving that Mifsud was not a Russian agent, but was rather a Western intelligence agent, and that he was operating on behalf of Western intelligence, the CIA, MI6, or someone like that. If you can prove that, that blows this entire thing away, because it was him telling Papadopoulos about the emails, which is what we're told launched the entire thing. So if the entire thing was launched based on a frame-up, on an entrapment scheme hosted by the CIA or UK intelligence working on our behalf, then of course you blow up the entire counterintelligence operation and you have a lot of people going to jail. And as I've said, there'll be dozens of people indicted and hundreds will receive some sort of disciplinary action. We have Sky News in Australia. Sky News in Australia reporting that Barr and Durham are going to be interviewing Alexander Down the Hatch Downer. Barr and Durham are going to interview Down the Hatch Downer. Uh-oh. We also have Judicial Watch receiving new documents showing that rodentstein was part of a coup plot, and that when Mueller went to the White House with Rodentstein, it was essentially a setup. It was the purpose of which was to give Mueller the chance to feel Trump out. There's a lot here. There's 145 pages. You can view them on Judicial Watch's website. I don't have time to go through it all because I'm down to just a few minutes. But I can tell you I read through most of it, and it is damning. And I don't know for how long I sat here and told everyone that Rodentstein was a dirty, dirty rat. That's why I call him Rodentstein. I told you this guy was dirty from day one. And I would still get people sometimes in the comment section, and, I'm not, bitching at you or anything, but I still had quite a few people that know Rodentstein, he's white hat, he's turned, blah, 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 blah. Well, maybe he has turned now, but he was never a white hat. Never, 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 never. And I was 100% sure of that. And now with the evidence that we've had come out what we had come out last week, what we've got come out this week, there's absolutely no doubt that I was correct, right along with many other people, that Rodentstein really was a rat. He was going to wear a wire. He was serious. He was talking 25th Amendment. In addition to that, and these 145 pages of emails, we have one where Rodentstein is telling Uncle Bob, the executioner Mueller, that, quote, the boss and his staff do not know about our discussions. Who is the boss? He's talking about Sessions. He is talking about Sessions. So he did not tell Sessions that he had been having these conversations with Mueller. Rodentstein did not disclose to Sessions that he had been having these discussions since the day after Comey was fired with Mueller. On May 16th, the day before the Mueller appointment, Rodentstein emails former Bush administration Deputy Attorney General and says, quote, I am with Mueller. He shares my views. Duty calls. Sometimes the moment chooses us. Yes, it does, Mr. Rodentstein. The moment chooses us. And you have been chosen. The moment has chosen you, Mr. Rodentstein, to go to prison for sedition. Also, we have many, many emails by Rodentstein to anti-Trump media hacks. And finally, something that I absolutely knew, where we learned that Rodentstein did call Uncle Bob the executioner the day after Comey was fired. Do you remember, you guys who've been watching my videos for a long time, do you remember literally back in the spring of 2018, a year and a half ago, I was saying they need to get all the emails from Rodentstein, McCabe, and Uncle Bob the executioner, and Comey. Those four. Get all their emails, because I was telling you that they would find out that some combination of these individuals were communicating with Mueller. Either McCabe or Rodentstein or Comey were communicating with Uncle Bob the executioner. As soon as Comey was fired, that's when I said they were probably talking to him. I said if you get their emails, you will find out that Uncle Bob didn't just show up on the scene a week later with nothing going on in between, that there had to have been conversations going on, and now we know it's true, and now we know it was Rodentstein. And we know he actually asked McCabe to call Mueller on his behalf. McCabe said, you call him. I ain't calling him, you call him. And of course, we don't know about Comey because we haven't seen Comey's emails, but I can almost guarantee you that Comey was talking to Mueller. Probably the day he was fired, he was calling Mueller. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm all out of time. We'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. You guys have a good night. See you. Bye.